There is a photo that circulates every few years on social media, always with a caption about how sweet, how funny, or how perfectly wholesome the moment looks. A toddler, grinning, sitting beside the family dog, or perched on the back of a pet pig, or reaching toward a colorful parrot in a cage. It looks harmless. It looks like the kind of moment parents dream of capturing. But animal behaviorists, pediatricians, and emergency room doctors will tell you something uncomfortable. Some of the most popular pets in American homes, alongside a handful of exotic animals people bring home without fully understanding them, are capable of seriously injuring, or even killing, a small child. And the warning signs are almost always there before the tragedy happens. This isn't about demonizing animals. Most of the creatures on this list are loving, loyal, and safe in the right hands, under the right supervision. But instinct doesn't disappear just because an animal lives in a house instead of the wild. A beak evolved to crack nuts doesn't know the difference between a walnut and a toddler's finger. A jaw built to take down prey doesn't understand the concept of just playing. Today, we're counting down 12 pets and exotic animals that wildlife experts and pediatric safety organizations agree should never be left alone with a child, using real documented cases to show exactly why the rules exist and where they came from. Stick around, because the number one spot involves the animal statistically responsible for more fatal attacks on children in American homes than any other pet in the country, according to the data researchers have spent decades compiling. Before we get into the list, if you're the kind of person who likes learning the real facts behind the animals we live with, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It genuinely helps this channel keep making videos like this one. And I'd love to know, drop a comment and tell me what part of the world you're watching from right now. All right, let's get into it. Starting off at number 12, we have the pot-bellied pig. Since the late 1980s, pot-bellied pigs have become a fixture in American households. Prized for their intelligence, which rivals that of dogs, and their long lifespans, which can stretch past 15 years. But that same intelligence comes packaged with a stubborn, food-driven temperament and a set of sharp tusks that develop as the animal matures, especially in males. Adult pot-bellied pigs can weigh well over 150 pounds, and unlike dogs, they were never selectively bred over thousands of years for cooperative behavior with humans. They were bred, first and foremost, to survive and to eat, and that instinct never fully leaves them. Humane societies and exotic pet rescues across the country report a steady stream of bite incidents, most tied to food guarding. A pig that feels a child is too close to its bowl, or that snatches at food the child is holding, can lash out fast, and a bite from those jaws can cause serious puncture wounds, sometimes requiring stitches. Pigs also establish a strict pecking order within their household, and if a pig decides it outranks a small child in that hierarchy, it may nip or shove to enforce that ranking. Behavior that can escalate quickly if a caregiver isn't present to intervene. Rescue organizations that take in surrendered pot-bellied pigs consistently list unpredictable aggression around food and young children as one of the top reasons families give them up, often after years of what seemed like calm, easy companionship, right up until the moment a child got too close to a food bowl. At number 11, we travel to the aviary with large parrots, especially macaws. These birds are stunning, capable of forming deep bonds with their owners, mimicking human speech and living for decades, sometimes outliving the children who grow up with them. But their beaks are built by evolution to crack Brazil nuts and palm seeds, some of the hardest natural materials a beak has to deal with in the wild. That means the bite force of a large macaw can exceed several hundred pounds per square inch, more than enough to break a small finger or take off a fingertip. Veterinary and avian behavior specialists routinely document cases of macaws biting children who reached into a cage or handled the bird incorrectly, sometimes severing tissue down to the bone. Parrots are also prone to what behaviorists call redirected aggression, where a bird startled or annoyed by something else, a loud noise, another pet, a stranger at the door, strikes out at whoever is nearest, and that is very often a small child standing beside the perch. Because parrots bond intensely with one favored person in a household, they can also become jealous or possessive, and avian veterinarians frequently counsel parents that a bird's affection for an adult owner does not extend automatically to that owner's children. Number 10 brings us to a smaller but surprisingly dangerous animal, the domestic ferret. Ferrets are curious, playful, and have exploded in popularity as apartment pets over the last few decades, prized for their energy and their almost cat-like antics. But their instincts are those of a small predator, closely related to weasels and polecats, animals built to chase, bite, and shake small prey until it stops moving. In a well-documented case from Brooklyn, New York in 1987, a ferret left alone in a room with a sleeping infant caused injuries to the child's face and hand. A case that was widely covered by national news outlets at the time and became a turning point in public awareness about ferret safety around infants. Similar, less publicized incidents have continued to appear in pediatric emergency room reports over the decades since, almost always involving a ferret left unsupervised in a room with a sleeping or unattended baby. The American Academy of Pediatrics has since specifically warned that ferrets should never be left unsupervised with young children, noting that the animal's prey drive can be triggered by the scent of milk or formula on a baby's skin, smells that can register to a ferret's nose the same way prey does in the wild. At number 9, we have the green iguana, one of the most commonly kept reptiles in the United States. Iguanas can grow to over 5 feet in length and are equipped with a whip-like tail capable of delivering a painful strike, along with rows of sharp, serrated teeth designed for shredding tough vegetation, teeth that can just as easily tear skin. Their claws, built for climbing trees in their native Central and South American habitats, are long, curved, and capable of raking deep scratches across a child's arm or face if the animal feels threatened or is startled by a sudden movement. Beyond the physical injury risk, iguanas and most reptiles carry salmonella bacteria naturally in their digestive systems, and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has published repeated warnings connecting pet reptiles to salmonella outbreaks in young children, who are especially vulnerable to severe illness from the bacteria because their immune systems are still developing. An iguana doesn't need to bite a child to send them to the hospital. Simple contact, followed by a child putting their hands near their mouth or face, can be enough, which is why pediatricians generally advise against keeping reptiles of any kind in homes with children under 5. For our next entry, we travel to the swamps, or more accurately, to the backyards of the small but real community of people who keep American alligators as pets, a practice that is illegal in most states but still turns up in wildlife seizure reports every year. A baby alligator is under a foot long and can seem like a harmless novelty, which is exactly how these situations tend to begin. But a full-grown American alligator can reach 8 to 13 feet in length, weigh several hundred pounds, and generate a bite force that researchers who study reptile bite mechanics have measured at close to 2,000 pounds per square inch, among the strongest bite forces ever recorded in a living animal. Wildlife officials who respond to illegal alligator seizures consistently report finding the animals in homes with children present, And herpetologists are clear that no amount of hand-raising changes the fact that an alligator is a cold-blooded ambush predator that responds to fast movement and small size as triggers, not as a household member it recognizes and protects. An animal with that kind of bite force does not need to be aggressive to be catastrophic. It only needs one unsupervised moment, which is exactly why wildlife agencies treat these seizures as urgent regardless of how calm the animal appears when officers arrive. Number 7 takes us back indoors, to another reptile that looks far less threatening than it actually is, the monitor lizard. Including species like the Nile monitor and the Asian water monitor sold in the exotic pet trade. A Nile monitor can grow past 6 feet, and a large water monitor can exceed 7 feet and 40 pounds, armed with sharp recurved claws built for digging and climbing, a powerful whip-like tail, and jaws strong enough to crack turtle shells in the wild. Veterinary and reptile behavior specialists widely describe these larger monitor species as unsuitable for households with children, noting that even monitors handled from hatchling size often remain defensive and unpredictable as adults, reacting to sudden movement with a combination of biting, clawing, and tail strikes that can produce deep lacerations. Unlike dogs, monitors show few reliable warning signals before defensive action. No growl, no raised hackles, which is part of why reptile keeper associations specifically flag them as high-risk pets in any home with young children, since there is often no visible cue to react to before the strike itself. If you're enjoying this list, now is a great time to hit subscribe, because the entries coming up are the ones responsible for the most serious documented injuries to children in American homes, and you won't want to miss them. At number 6, we look at venomous snakes, a category that includes rattlesnakes, copperheads, and a small but persistent community of hobbyists who keep them despite the obvious risk. Often drawn to exotic or imported species not native to North America. Poison control centers across the United States log thousands of venomous snakebite cases every year, and while most involve adult handlers who were bitten during feeding or cleaning, children have been bitten in homes where these snakes were kept as pets, sometimes after an enclosure was left unsecured or a latch failed. A bite from a pit viper delivers hemotoxic venom that begins destroying tissue and disrupting blood clotting within minutes. And in a small child, the ratio of venom to body weight makes envenomation dramatically more dangerous than in an adult, sometimes requiring far larger doses of anti-venom relative to the child's size just to stabilize them. Herpetological safety organizations are unanimous on this point. Venomous snakes have no place in a household with children, regardless of how secure the owner believes the enclosure to be, because a single unlatched door is all it takes. For our next entry, we move to something far larger and far more powerful, the Burmese python. These snakes are legally kept as pets across much of the country, despite growing to lengths of over 15 feet and weights exceeding 150 pounds, making them among the largest snakes anyone can legally own in a residential home. In July of 2009, in Sumter County, Florida, a pet Burmese python escaped its enclosure overnight and killed a 2-year-old girl named Cheyenne Hare as she slept. A case that was extensively investigated and reported by Florida wildlife officials and national news at the time. The python had reportedly not been fed in over a month, and the enclosure was later found to be inadequate to contain an animal of that size. The tragedy led directly to stricter state and federal regulations on the ownership of large constrictor snakes, including restrictions on interstate transport of several python species. Pythons kill through constriction, wrapping their bodies around a target and tightening with each exhale until breathing becomes impossible. a process that leaves no external wound and can happen in near silence, which is part of what makes an unsecured large constrictor so dangerous in a home with sleeping children. At number 4, we move from reptiles to a mammal that looks deceptively like an oversized house cat, the serval, along with early generation savanna cat hybrids bred from them. A serval is a wild African cat that can weigh up to 40 pounds, jump roughly 8 feet straight up from a standing position, and possesses a bite force and a hunting sequence. Stalk, pounce, bite. Built entirely around catching birds and rodents in the wild. Exotic cat rescue organizations that take in surrendered servals and early generation hybrids consistently report that the leading reason for surrender is a bite or scratch incident involving a child in the household, usually during what the owner describes as play. Unlike a domestic cat, which has been selectively bred for thousands of years to inhibit its bite during play, a serval's play behavior is largely unmodified predatory behavior, which means a fast-moving, high-pitched child can trigger the same stalking response the animal would use on prey in its native grasslands, complete with a full-force pounce that a small body simply isn't built to absorb. We're closing in on the most dangerous entries now, and at number 3 we look at primates kept as pets. A category that includes capuchin monkeys and, in rarer but far more serious cases, chimpanzees. Capuchins became widely recognizable through film and television, which fueled demand for them as exotic pets, but wild instinct doesn't fade with a Hollywood resume. And as these animals reach sexual maturity, males in particular can become aggressive and unpredictable, sometimes biting to assert dominance within their household troop, a group that includes any children living there. Primatologists have also flagged the risk of herpes B virus transmission from macaques and related species, a virus that can be fatal if untreated. The far more extreme end of this category is the chimpanzee, an animal that possesses several times the raw strength of an adult human. The most widely known case involves Travis, a chimpanzee raised as a family pet from infancy in Stamford, Connecticut, who in February of 2009 severely attacked a family friend who had come to help calm him down. An incident extensively covered by national media and investigated by Connecticut wildlife authorities. Travis had lived in the household for years without incident, which is exactly what made the sudden attack so alarming to primate experts, and the case became a landmark example of why chimpanzees, regardless of how gentle they have always seemed, retain the physical capability to cause catastrophic injury in seconds, a risk that becomes even more extreme when the potential victim is a small child. For our next entry, we shift to a familiar face, but one with a wild ancestor in its recent bloodline, the wolf-dog hybrid. Bred by crossing domestic dogs with wolves, these animals combine a wolf's size, strength, and prey drive with just enough unpredictability that behaviorists consider them fundamentally different from a typical family dog, even when raised from puppyhood in a loving home. A full wolf-dog hybrid can weigh well over 100 pounds and possesses jaw strength significantly higher than most domestic breeds, built for taking down large game in the wild. Dog bite fatality research conducted by veterinary behaviorists and public health researchers has specifically identified wolf-dog hybrids as involved in a disproportionate number of fatal attacks on children relative to how rarely they are kept as pets compared to standard dog breeds, a pattern researchers attribute to the combination of wild predatory instinct and a lack of the thousands of years of selective breeding for human cooperation that shaped domestic dog breeds. Several states and municipalities now restrict or ban wolf-dog hybrid ownership specifically because of this pattern. And that brings us to number 1, the animal statistically responsible for more fatal attacks on children in American homes than any other pet, and it isn't an exotic species at all. It's the pit bull type dog. This is a sensitive topic, and it's worth saying clearly, right up front, that individual pit bulls are frequently loving, gentle, patient family companions, and that breed alone does not determine any individual dog's behavior. Millions of pit bull type dogs live peacefully in homes with children across the country every single day. But when researchers and public health agencies compile data on dog bite-related fatalities in the United States, drawing from sources including the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, animal control records, and peer-reviewed veterinary studies, pit bull-type dogs consistently appear in a disproportionate share of fatal incidents involving young children compared to their overall population among pet dogs nationwide. The reasons cited by researchers include the breed's historical development for bull baiting and later dogfighting, activities long since banned, which selected over generations for a bite-and-hold style of aggression once triggered, combined with substantial size, muscle density, and jaw strength relative to many other breeds. Researchers and veterinary behaviorists do note this remains a debated area of animal science, with some experts arguing that breed identification in bite statistics is often unreliable, and that factors like training, chaining, and neglect matter more than breed itself. This doesn't mean every pit bull is dangerous, and reputable trainers and shelters emphasize that responsible ownership. Early socialization, and above all, never leaving any dog alone with a small child, dramatically reduce risk regardless of breed. But the raw statistics on fatal outcomes are why this entry takes the top spot on our list, ahead of every exotic animal we've covered today. So there you have it. 12 pets and exotic animals that experts agree should never be left alone with a child. From the beak of a macaw to the coils of a Burmese python, all the way to the number one spot, where the most familiar animal on the entire list turns out to carry the most serious statistics. The common thread running through every single entry isn't that these animals are monsters, and it isn't that owning them makes someone a bad or careless pet owner. It's that instinct, size, and strength don't disappear just because an animal lives in a house, sleeps on a couch, and greets you at the door every evening. Supervision, education, and a genuine respect for what these animals are capable of, even the gentlest of them, are what keep families safe, and every organization we've referenced today agrees on that same basic principle. Never leave a young child completely alone with any animal, no matter how trustworthy it has always seemed. Of course, this list could easily have included a few other contenders: snapping turtles, certain exotic spiders, aggressive roosters, or even large livestock like rams and bulls kept on family farms, all of which have their own documented histories of injuring children. Let us know in the comments which pets you think deserve a spot on this list, and whether you agree with our number one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.